And we're back. Is everyone back?
Yes.
Okay, Lulu is here. Okay, great. Okay, I see Farha and Akram have joined us. Thank you so much. Can you both listen to me?
Yes.
Hi.
You're loud and clear.
How are you?
Very well, very well.
Well, okay, guys, I want to introduce you to Farha Kirubi. She's a guest speaker today on Islamic finance. So, Farha, please feel free to introduce yourself, and we take it from there.
Wonderful. I was able to hop onto the sort of tail end of your session earlier. Some very interesting things. I was able to learn some good tips as well. Thanks for allowing us to partake in that. So salam everyone. As Loredana mentioned, my name is Farha Kirubi, and I'm an Islamic finance fintech professional. Now, I'm extremely passionate about financial inclusion, empowerment, and education. And I consider myself really a long life student. And I envy all you students here today, because I believe learning is a beautiful journey. And I believe that the more you learn, the more places you go. And I love to travel. But remember, the aim of education is not just knowledge, but action. And I hope that after this course, or even possibly currently as you go through the course, that all of you will action on the knowledge that you acquire. Now, Loredana kindly allowed me to share my little knowledge on Islamic finance and Islamic fintech. So bear with me, I don't have all the answers, but if there are questions that come up during my my presentations, please feel free to put it in the Q&A, and where I can answer it, I'll be more than happy to share, and where I can't, I will come back to you with answers.
You're too modest. You are too modest.
So I begin my contribution with a brief dive into Islamic finance and its principles, as I'm not too sure just how much you all know about Islamic finance, and then we can go into Islamic fintech. So Islamic finance is a financial system that operates according to Islamic law, which is also known as Sharia, and is therefore Sharia compliant. And similar to conventional financing systems, Islamic finance features banks, as we all are aware of Islamic banks or Sharia compliant banks. It features capital markets, fund managers, investment firms, as well as insurance companies. Now with insurance, Islamic insurance is known as takaful. Now, Islamic finance is a financing and investing activity that has to comply with Islamic law. And the common practices of Islamic finance and banking, just to give you a brief history, came into existence along with the foundation of Islam. So it is not as new as we think now. However, the formal formation is more recent, if you will. Now, the Arabs and the Ottoman Empire traded extensively with people in Spain, and they also developed a certain no-interest financial system that worked on a profit and loss sharing method, which is what Islamic finance principles are about. And decades later, this type of banking grew, and a cooperative organization that allowed its depositors to obtain small interest-free loans was set up in Egypt, and this was in 1975. Later on that same year, the first privately owned interest-free bank called Dubai Islamic Bank was established. I'm sure we're all familiar with DIB, Dubai Islamic Bank. Now, Dubai Islamic Bank also recently set up in Kenya, which is where I'm from. I heard you mention M-Pesa, Loredana. I'm always proud when that is used in cases. And as a sector, Islamic finance has been growing quite rapidly. The growth rate is about 15 to 25% per year, but we're yet to see how things are impacted with the pandemic. And now, since Islamic finance is based on several restrictions and principles that do not exist in the conventional banking system, there are special types of financing arrangements. And I just want to first go through the principles, and then we'll go through the products, if you will. So the first principle is paying or charging an interest. And I'm sure you've all heard of this as being one of the core differences, right? So a lot of people ask me, oh my God, how does Islamic finance work if there is no interest? Now, Islamic finance considers lending with interest payments as an exploitative practice that favors the lender at the expense of the borrower at its core. And according to Sharia law or Islamic law, interest or usury, or in Arabic, they call it riba, is strictly prohibited. Second is investing in businesses that are involved in prohibited activities. So things like alcohol manufacturing or selling, tobacco, pork, gambling, dealing in firearms, unless you are, government, and adult entertainment is actually prohibited as well in Islam. And third is speculation, which the Arabic term is maisir. Now, Islamic law strictly prohibits any form of speculation or gambling. And Islamic finance institutions cannot be involved in contracts where the ownership of goods depend on an uncertain event in the future. So examples of this is casino type games, animal race bettings, lotteries, and the likes. And fourth principle is uncertainty or extreme risk is prohibited. And the term here used is gharar. Now, the rules for Islamic finance ban participation in contracts with excessive risk or uncertainty. And gharar measures the legitimacy of risk or uncertainty in investments. Now, gharar is observed with contracts, derivative contracts, short selling. This would fall under gharar or contracts that have excessive risk. And Islamic finance is also based on two other crucial principles. So one being that there has to be material finality of the transaction, which means that each transaction has to be related to a real underlying economic transaction. There has to be a real asset involved in the transaction. And second, it's based on, as I mentioned earlier, the profit and loss sharing principle. Therefore, parties entering into a contract in Islamic finance have to share profits and losses and the risks that are associated with the transaction. So ideally, and I say ideally in quotes, no one can benefit from the transaction more than the other party. So this avoids the predatory nature of interest-bearing contracts. Now, there are several types of financing arrangements in Islamic finance with very, very specific mandates, and I'll share the most popular. I mean, there's several financing arrangements that keep evolving or are part of the sort of core contracts. So the first one I've highlighted here is a profit and loss sharing partnership agreement, which is called Mudaraba. And this is a profit and loss sharing partnership where one partner is the financier, and this partner provides the capital while the other partner provides the labor. And they are responsible for the management and investment of this capital, or they have the technical expertise. Now, the profits are then shared between the parties according to a pre-agreed ratio. And this agreement in conventional terms is similar to private equity to some degree, where you've got an investor investing in talent and the talent manages that investment, and then the profit is then shared at the end based on an agreed ratio. So that is Mudaraba. Then we have Musharaka, which is also a profit and loss sharing contract, but this is based on a joint venture. So here the joint venture is basically all partners contribute capital and share the profits and losses on a pro rata basis. And there are different types of Musharaka arrangements. And third is Ijara, which is a leasing agreement. Here, it's a financing agreement where the lessor, who must own the property, leases their property to the lessee in exchange for a stream of rental and purchase payments, ending with the transfer of property at the end. So this is similar to like a rent to own arrangement. So imagine the house that you're living in if you were paying rent, but with the idea of owning this property at the end of the tenure. This would be an ijara contract. And there are a few other arrangements as I mentioned earlier, but these are the most commonly used. Now, I want to also highlight the differences in investment vehicles. Now, due to the number of prohibitions by Islamic law, many of the conventional investment vehicles, you know, like bonds, options, or derivatives, are forbidden in Islamic finance. So the two major investment vehicles in Islamic finance are equities or fixed income instruments. Now with equities, Islamic law allows investments in company shares. So as long as the business activity is not prohibited in Islam, you can buy shares in a company. And with fixed income instruments, since lending with interest payments is forbidden in Islamic law, there are no conventional bonds, but we do have Islamic bonds, which is their equivalent. However, here, the bond represents a partial ownership in the actual asset as opposed to a debt obligation, which is what a bond is. So that's the sort of core difference, if you will. So that sort of covers the sort of basics I wanted to go over when it comes to Islamic finance. And now let's take a look at the Islamic fintech industry. So it started almost
just
yes?
just to give an overview of how the Islamic finance, considering that is this special type of doing finance, right? It's not like the conventional world. How does it connect directly with the fintech world? Because, for example,
Yes.
I have heard of, you spoke about the bonds, and lately I've heard of digital sukuks, for example. Sukuk is the bond, right? The Islamic bond. So slowly, even Islamic finance is shifting towards the digitalization, right?
Oh no, absolutely. In fact, the digitization has come at a perfect time to allow Islamic finance to really grow and further develop. And that's what I now want to take a dive into Islamic fintech industry. And is there a difference, you know? So the Islamic fintech industry started almost a decade ago and has had an imminent role in the evolution of the Islamic finance products and services. And, you know, the advancement of technology, this is what has led to rapid development of new and innovative financial services. So even within Islamic finance, thanks to the sort of tech progression, there's been innovation around the Islamic finance products and services. And, you know, from an Islamic law standpoint, technology is neutral. It's not halal or haram. It's what you do with this technology that then determines, are you compliant or not? So, you know, technology at its base is neutral and only serves as an enabler, right? And Islamic fintech differs from its conventional counterpart as it is even more transparent, and back to its principles, should be beneficial for all parties or both parties, and should be compliant to the activities. So you know, the tech element does not come in and eliminate the prior principles, if you will. Okay. So, and the core impact theme in fintech can be classified into three. So you have greater automation from insights all the way through to the actual activity. And then there's a reduction in the use of intermediaries, because now you can actually trade and conduct your business directly, correct? As well as decentralization and the security elements as well. So in order to stay competitive in this thriving industry, fintech companies are required to have at least a combination of two core impacts. Now, you can't talk about Islamic fintech without mentioning financial inclusion, as this is a core component of Islamic finance and the premise of why it exists. It is there for the fairness and benefit of the entire community. Now, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development has established and adopted 17 Sustainable Development Goals known as the SDGs. I'm sure we've all heard of the SDGs to some extent. And these were actually drawn out for the sake of people, planet, prosperity, peace, as well as partnership. All of this takes what the Islamic finance core principles or Islamic law core principles are about. And the dynamic amalgamation of fintech and the digital technology offers a very, very strong enabler for Islamic finance to reach its clients more rapidly without the need to build, physical presence or very technical distribution channels that a lot of the times are hindrances. And the world is now rapidly reinventing itself with technology, I think more so in this pandemic era that we're in, bringing huge gains to society on one part. There's obviously the cons with everything, right? Now, Muslims especially have the opportunity to create new solutions and ecosystems in the Islamic digital economy to match and serve very unique needs that this community has, however, based on universal ethical principles that Islam shares. Now, another key area to look at digitizing is Islamic philanthropies. Social finance is a core component of the Islamic economy, Islamic law, and Islam itself. Now, particularly those that are involved in zakat, waqf, which is endowment, and sadaqah, which is charity. So areas to explore in terms of opportunities that are out there would include things, platforms to calculate zakat. So typically before, people would either have the knowledge to calculate their own zakat, or they would actually go to either to a lawyer or to the masjid, and they would have a place where somebody would actually help you calculate your zakat. But now with digitization, there's an opportunity to actually set up these platforms where people can very easily calculate their zakat. The same platforms can also collect your zakat. And we can also look at developing innovative payment technologies. And there are, several payment technologies that are out there. A recent opportunity that has come up thanks to the pandemic, and people very, being concerned about exchanging currency, as in hard notes, is in the mosques in Malaysia. What they have created is what do you call it? A barcode. So what you do is you simply scan your phone, and it would automatically take your contribution, your charity. So again, thanks to these sort of new advancements people are coming up with sort of new technology. I thought that was quite fascinating. It also saves the hassle of carrying your wallet into the mosque. Some people lose their wallet, some people don't have change, and so forth. But now with a simple barcode that you simply just scan your phone, you have the capacity to contribute. So it's becoming as easy as hailing for a taxi or making a delivery order, you know what I mean? So it's very interesting how the payments sector is evolving. So there's a lot of opportunities to see within the Islamic economy how digitization can come in and introduce innovation. Now, to conclude, the Islamic finance industry assets as a whole have been projected to reach a staggering figure of $3.8 trillion by 2030. This, I would presume, would be affected, just given the pandemic, but we'll see how that goes. This projection, however, offers a very bright prospect for Islamic fintech, ethical and responsible finance. I think it's very exciting just to see the potential growth there. And my thoughts on the next progressive phase of Islamic banking isn't only driven by Sharia compliant offerings and its position that's on par with conventional banking, because that's been the major argument. You know, are we doing what the conventional banking practice is offering? But also to distinguish in light of innovation-driven advancement. So we don't necessarily have to look at ourselves as being at par, but we can actually overtake the conventional offerings thanks to, you know, the digital innovations. So I believe that Islamic fintech innovations can be further enhanced with encouragement offered by monetary authorities. I think this is very important. Strong awareness, beg your pardon. And this awareness needs to include the entire Islamic finance stakeholders. You still have people today in Muslim majority countries that have a huge misconception of Islamic finance. And I think this is still a battle that needs to be worked on. And facilitative regulatory settings across Islamic financial markets. I think this is very important. And I end with that.
Thank you so much, Farha. Thank you. I hope you all enjoyed all the drops of knowledge that Farha shared with us. I really agree with you that there is a huge opportunity in Islamic finance. And correct me if I'm mistaken, lately with the research made on cryptocurrencies, they have been declared Sharia compliant, right?
Yes. Now there's a few schools of thoughts. However, there is a compliant element in the crypto space. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. That's good. Thank you so much. Anyone has questions about Islamic finance with Farha? Feel free. Nadia, please.
Yes. I'd just be curious to know which markets, and perhaps it's a little bit of a tricky question, but within the Islamic finance space and the markets that sort of fall more dominantly under Islamic finance, which 2 or 3 markets do you see as being particularly dynamic or really embracing innovation more than the others? I mean, could you name a few?
Sure. I think top of that list, and Nadia, thanks for that question. Top of that list is Malaysia. I actually was fortunate enough to spend the last 3 years in Malaysia, and actually went back to school to take a master's in Islamic finance. And the reason that I actually chose Malaysia was for that particular reason. They are very dynamic, and this is a top-down approach, meaning the government is very pro-innovation, very pro new ideas and so forth. And that's very, very important. So yes, I would say Malaysia. And then for this region, I would say the UAE and Bahrain are probably tied. You know, we live in this beautiful country that does not want to be outpaced in anything. So the UAE is trying to position itself as the Islamic finance hub. And interestingly, I actually thought that we would be much more advanced given Dubai Islamic Bank was the first private Islamic finance that came about in 1975. But I think there was a long period of lullness, if you will. But the UAE now is alive to the fact that it is important to embrace innovation and to support Islamic finance. And Bahrain is following suit as well. So in order, I would say Malaysia, UAE, and Bahrain. The largest economy in terms of Islamic finance is Saudi. Largest Islamic bank is Al Rajhi Bank. Indonesia is also following suit quite closely. However, their advancement is coming up largely within the startup ecosystem. So there's a lot of innovation within Islamic fintechs that are coming out of Indonesia. However, the banking system is still a bit nascent, and the other areas of the Islamic economy is still a little bit behind. But within the startup ecosystem, they are really pushing through. So those are the sort of 4 countries I would say that have interesting capacities.
Okay, thank you.
You're most welcome.
Thank you, Farha. Thank you so much for joining us today.